Good morning, River of Life Community Fellowship. It is time for our Friday edition of Sunday School, where we have a short daily devotion since we can't meet for Sunday School. Now, this week we've been talking a lot about how God corrects the soil in our hearts so that our faith can grow, so that the seed of His Word can grow in our lives and grow our faith and produce fruit. And, we've talked a lot about how we are supposed to produce fruit, but we haven't talked yet about what that fruit is and what it looks like in our lives. So today, that is what we're going to do. And we're going to go straight to the fruit of the Spirit in Galatians 5, starting in verse 22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. Now, I could probably spend an entire summer preaching through the fruits of the Spirit. There's just, in these two verses, there's just so much there. But I just want to give you just a little teaching on the fruit of the Spirit today. And, the first thing that you need to note is that the fruit comes from the Spirit. It's not our fruit. It's not the fruit that we grow. It is the fruit that the Spirit of God grows in us. And so, just like I've said before earlier this week, in order for us to be able to produce fruit, we have to stay connected to God. We have to stay connected to His Spirit. We have to deal with the sin that is in our lives so that we can have that connection and so that He can grow the fruit in us. So then, what is this fruit? What does it look like? We have, I'm just going to kind of go through these real quick. We have love, and that's, God is love. And so, that's, love for God, love for others. Two greatest commandments: love God, love others. That's love. And so when the Spirit is in our lives, we are showing love. And the next one, joy. And joy is this, sometimes joy is equated with happiness, but the truth is happiness comes and goes, but joy is something that stays with us no matter the circumstances, no matter the hardships, no matter the pain. There's still this overriding sense of joy that is in us because of the Spirit of God. And the next thing is peace. And one of the things that when Jesus was born, the angels shouted, "Peace on earth and goodwill to men." That was, and that's because Jesus brings us peace with God. He brings us peace with God. But there's also, this peace also comes in just, kind of the same thing as joy. When there's crazy stuff going on around us, we can have peace. Just like Jesus had peace when He was sleeping in the front of the boat while there was a storm going on. Just peace in knowing that no matter what's going on around us, God is with us. God has our back. And that's a big, especially in today, in the time that we're going through now. Peace is so important to have. Just that peace that surpasses all understanding, that peace that comes from God. And the next thing is patience. And this is kind of a big thing. God is so patient with us. We're constantly falling back into our sin, but He is so patient with us as we grow fruit and as He does things. And so part of that is us being patient with God as He fulfills His promise, because He doesn't do it in our time, and so sometimes we think He's slow. But just being patient, knowing that He will fulfill His promise, but also being patient in just this idea of fruit in our lives and growing in what God is doing in our lives. Because if you've ever owned a fruit tree, you know that the first day of spring is not the day that you get to pick the fruit. It takes time to grow the fruit. And and it's the same in our lives. It takes time for the Spirit to grow the fruit. And so, just being patient with God, being patient with the Spirit as these things happen. The next thing is kindness. And kindness is such a big deal, but being kind to the people around us, looking out for their interests, not just ours, being humble around them, that is such an important thing. And that is something that the Spirit of God helps us to do. And then goodness, and I think another term for this is righteousness. Someone called, one time a man came up to Jesus and said good, and called Him good teacher. And Jesus' response was, "Why do you call me good? No one is good except God alone." And this is it with righteousness. No one is righteous except God alone. But because of the sacrifice Jesus has made, He imputes us with His righteousness. We get to have his righteousness. His righteousness gets to clothe us. And that's something that comes from the Spirit, is that goodness, that ability to seek right instead of wrong, that as we grow closer and closer to God and further away from our sin, more and more we see the goodness coming through that. We see the righteousness coming through that, that we get to live in a way that is less sinful. And that's such a good thing. And then faithfulness. God is faithful to us. He has never left us. He has never forsaken us. And so our faithfulness both to him and to those around us is something that the Spirit grows in us. So we get to be our faithfulness to God, that we seek him rather than us, and we do the things he tells us to do rather than the things we want to do, and that's faithfulness. And then also with those around us, that we're people of our word. We do the things that we say we're going to do because God is in us, and because that character, that attribute of God is something that should reflect off of us. And if it's not, then that reflects poorly on God. And then gentleness. One of the things that that we see in the New Testament is just this idea, like when a brother sins, when someone sins, like we don't come down harsh on them, we don't hate them, we don't just boot them out of the fellowship, but we correct them with gentleness. And why do we do that? Because we need corrected too. Because we are sinful, all of us. And when we need corrected, we need it done in such a way that helps us to see that it's sin, but to know that we're still loved. And so we have this gentleness, not only with those who are in the faith with us, but also the people around us, that we are gentle with them, that we show them love and compassion, because God showed us love and compassion when we didn't deserve it. When we were yet sinners, he died for us. And so that gentleness that he showed us, we show to others. And then the last one is self-control. And, like that self-control is like, you know what? I want to give into this sin, but I'm not going to. I want to give into this anger, this hatred, or this, this thing going on, but I'm not going to, because I know it is wrong. And so we show self-control. And now one interesting thing that I heard about this, the fruits of the Spirit, is if you look at the first one, you look at the last one, you got love and self-control. Those are like bookends to the fruits of the Spirit. Like having those helps you to have the rest. And so those are the ones that are probably like, and I think I agree with this, those are the ones that are most important, that we have love for both for God and for others, and that we have self-control in how we react to things and how we do things and how we choose to do things, and that through those we're able to maintain that connection with God, and the Spirit is able to grow this fruit, the rest of the fruit in us. So those are the ones we seek. And now, of course, we don't get those by ourselves. We have to be connected to God to have them. And so once again, as I finish this video, as I've done every day this week, make sure you are seeking God. That is my encouragement to you. Seek God today. Connect to him. Let him deal with the things that are hindering your relationship with him and that are hindering your faith from growing, so that you can produce the fruit, so that the Spirit can come into you and produce the fruit that you were made to produce. That's what I have for you today. Thanks, and God bless.